We're live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. What happened to your leg?
Could be a torn meniscus, I don't know.
Playing basketball?
Basketball? No, flag football.
Playing flag football? Okay, you
Yeah.
crossed somebody over. It was like,
Yeah.
Well, I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
I got problems with my feet, so I understand. All right? I'm going to pray for you. Everything going to be good. No worries. Hey, let's get this party started. Let's get this party started. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Official test start time, 2 minutes. As you know, 5 pages, 5 paragraphs each, 5 words each sentence, 5 sentences per paragraph, 5 computer spaces in between, 5 revisions. You can use your hyper-scientific. You can use any artificial intelligence, but you must show the work and share it with the class. If you do not show the work and share it with the class, I'm going to assume all you did was use technology and you will get 0 credit for it. So let's rock and roll. First of all, network is secure. And I need to analog in because I have the Blue Origins charging. So the thing about this is that if anything goes wrong, it will cut the sound completely. So we have to be very, very careful. So open up your YouTube. Let's go Bloomberg. Let's go channel. Let's go videos. And let's go Asia Trade.
Again, it is free to join my community. The stocks I share are also free. The techniques and strategies I
Of
teach
course,
are also free.
YouTube will give
So
us a
please don't ask me if I
commercial
charge.
knowing that we're teaching a class. Alright? That makes no sense. Put on closed captioning and hope you guys know.
This is Asia Trade. I'm Shivrian in Tokyo. I'm Hadi Stragos in Sydney. The top stories this hour. NVIDIA shares pay gains in late traders as quarterly revenue forecast beats estimates, reaffirming the AI build-out boom. CEO Jensen Huang saying computing demand is growing exponentially. Asian stocks are set for gains after a positive session on Wall Street as a bond rally stalls. The Bank of Korea is expected to keep rates on hold today. Also ahead, Qantas profit climbs as more fuel-efficient aircraft replace the carrier's aging domestic fleet. We speak later with the CEO, Vanessa Hudson. And the chief of Lotte Group's drug-making unit tells us exclusively about the opportunities they're seeing from a shift in production away from China. We'll be watching tech suppliers across the Asia session, anything related to AI, given NVIDIA's, of course, bullish outlook. And we have already seen the Nikkei gaining for the last 2 sessions, and you can see right there, futures pointing to the upside. We could see more upside for exporters if we see more yen weakness, trading at that 156 level after we heard that Prime Minister Takaichi had nominated 2 BOJ board members that were seen as dovish. In fact, it's a big central bank day here across Asia, as we have the Bank of Korea also holding a key rate decision, expected to hold the rate steady at 2.5%. Perhaps a little bit of a different story to what we can expect from Australia, and perhaps more RBA tightening to come. That's the speculation after we saw inflation beating estimates. So do watch out for the Aussie dollar because it has seen significant strength against all G10 currencies. But of course, a big story today topping the agenda, NVIDIA's bullish outlook. We're talking about the biggest company in the world, and it's not only its $4.8 trillion valuation. The reason that's important, of course, is at a critical time when there's been a lot of jitters about the state of AI spending, software stocks, AI disruption. Of course, right now we have seen that revenue forecast for the first quarter are really beating expectations, even those lofty expectations, which has sent the stock higher as well. Some calling this impressive across the board. Let's actually discuss all of this with Bloomberg Tech co-anchor Ed Ludlow. So Ed, take us through the numbers.
Yeah, it's $78 billion plus or minus 2% in the April quarter, right? Crucially, that does not reflect or include any data center revenues from China. And the reason that I bring that up early is that straight after the earnings dropping, they filed a 10K that explained that in the month of February, without giving a specific date, the US government did grant them some licenses to export H200 to a certain list of Chinese companies with restrictions. So, maybe the market views that as potential upside to come. They are kind of tracking ahead of this bigger $500 billion forecast for Blackwell and Rubin systems through the balance of this calendar year. Crucially, margins still impressive. And, right now they're in a situation where they're ramping Blackwell. That is aiding the bottom line. The cash flow generation is very strong. And then this week alone, they started shipping the samples of Vera Rubin systems so customers can test, on track for the back half of this year. A time of transition where they go generation of technology annually, but it's not really impacting them. They're also managing inventory and capacity well, so have visibility on their ability to supply for several quarters to come.
What do we make of the stock move, Ed? Because obviously it's been a pretty contentious time in this space. Does this dispel some of the concerns of the AI scare trade, particularly after that Citrini report?
Yeah, like in the blog and in the chat room, I don't know if we as a newsroom really agreed in the moment what caused the gain to pair. There was a moment where the CFO Colette Kress was saying they recognize growing competition from the Chinese domestic chip players, who some of which have IPO'd recently, as you guys know, and there is a worry that they could compete with NVIDIA in markets, not just in China, but ex-China as well. The stock kind of made a move then. Then there was a question to Jensen Huang about whether he believed the capital expenditures figures of the hyperscalers, which in the quarter was still more than 50% of revenue, will continue to grow. And the way that Jensen Huang answered was, well, cash flows will grow. Because remember, this is the trade-off right now. The hyperscalers keep giving us these big capital expenditure numbers for the year, but it is impacting cash flow. And so his argument is, this is working. Tokens are profitable. All of the code that's being generated from NVIDIA compute platforms, the investment was worth it. The stock's up 0.8% now. It had been up 4%. Whether the street buys it in the morning, let me go to sleep, come back, and we'll see.
And I mean, we could have you here forever, but let's just get to some of the chips, of course, from NVIDIA, because you mentioned the Rubin chips upcoming, but of course we have Blackwell as well, which really pressured costs for NVIDIA. Last time there were out gross margins, but also the H200 chips for China. So much to talk about.
Yeah, they tried to explain that away, though. That right now Blackwell's in ramp. That's aiding the bottom line. What the analysts ask is what happens when you're doing both, selling Blackwell into the market, and then your biggest customers have to upgrade to the Vera Rubin. The CFO basically said both are possible at the same time. They fully expect those biggest customers to upgrade to Vera Rubin, and the words that she uses, there is no confusion about that process, a lot of confidence. So I guess in the sell side and the analyst notes, we'll see if that is a sort of roadblock right along the way, jumping from one platform to the next generation platform.
Bloomberg Tech going to Ed Ludlow there with a wrap of those NVIDIA numbers. And let's get some more analysis. Maribel Lopez is a principal analyst at Lopez Research, joined us now. Maribel, let me just get your sort of initial thoughts to these numbers and what the market might be sort of feeling at the moment.
NVIDIA continues to surprise and delight the market. It was a solid set of earnings, and more importantly, they had a very confident outlook for how they were going to sell more AI chips and data center product going forward. And I think we're all looking forward to seeing, is that going to be a thing? Could it be any bigger than this? And they basically said yes.
So when I asked you for
and file your taxes 100% free, plus get your biggest refund. Roughly 30.
Fast forward.
Could it be any bigger than this? And they basically said yes.
Which is very true.
What do you make of the sort of muted reaction, particularly as we're seeing, off the highs of the day for the share price? Do you think that is just, in terms of how steeply this particular company is priced? Or do you contextualize it with the recent sell-off that we've seen in this space?
Yeah, I think if you went to yesterday, we had a tremendous amount of AI fear in the market. I think if you come to today, there has been a bit of optimism put back into the market. Make no bones, though, a company like NVIDIA is very highly valued. But what we can say from the fundamentals of a business is that they will be able to sell everything that they can build for at least the coming year. So whether or not we will be able to see upside in the stock, is unknown. But whether or not they will be able to continue to perform and sell the product they said they're going to sell, I have confidence that they can do that based on the demand from the hyperscalers. And also we're finally starting to see enterprise AI inferencing demand hitting, finally.
It doesn't matter then that perhaps other parts of the business didn't do that well, like gaming, for example, that was once their bread and butter?
I think at this point, it wouldn't matter how much gaming they could sell. Gaming would never be able to outperform data centers for AI right now. We are in an AI capacity crunch. This is one of the reasons why they're so confident that they can sell older products and newer products to the same customer at the same time, because the customers like the hyperscalers need to have different price performance levels for different customer workloads, so they can take high end and low end depending on what type of customer they're selling to. And right now, basically any product NVIDIA has will be sold. So the real question is, do we see a credible threat from any other chip provider right now? You know, we were talking a lot about AMD's recently. We've been talking a lot about Chinese chip providers. These are actually pretty long-standing architectural decisions that people are making. So realistically, NVIDIA has a long tailwind for at least the next several years of commits that have already been placed with them. So the question is, will we start to see more activity in the space? There has to be more than one. It can't just be NVIDIA. But the question is when and how that translates.
Even CFO Kress mentioning Chinese competitors are making progress. What about Chinese clients? How important would they be for NVIDIA's future?
You cannot count the market out. It's a huge market, a tremendous opportunity. But right now, it's a very frothy geopolitical opportunity. So I think that one of the things that they tried to do was really talk about the other opportunities that aren't necessarily China, but that are nation and government specific. Sovereign AI has actually been a very big discussion globally. How do we build our own resilient AI infrastructure? And I think they're on point when they say that is something that they will be able to benefit from over the next 1 to 2 years as all nation states try to decide how they create their own independence in AI.
Maribel, you were surprised, as many of us, how much traction the Citrini post got, right? Do you think the market sort of ran away from that? Do you think it sort of hit on an existing dread that perhaps was already there? And what do you make of it in terms of, I guess, separating the companies that are going to be sustainably growing going forward and those that might be caught in the froth?
One of the things that we're seeing happen right now is that the tech stocks aren't all created equal in terms of how they're going to create money. So there's still a tremendous CapEx spend for cloud companies, for model companies. So if you're the person that's making chips and hardware, you're selling to a lot of people regardless of how much or how little margin they're making right now, right? So then the second wave of that is if you're on the software side, we saw SaaSmageddon last week. And one of the things that was interesting about that was to say, well, what's the real fear there? It's not that software as a service is dead. It's whether or not something like Claude Code and those models can impact their future revenue growth. So what we're seeing happen is a lot of dynamic nature in terms of what is the impact on various industries by AI coming out. So I still think we're going to see hyperscalers do well because that's where you're going to buy the tokens from. We're still going to see hardware and chip companies do well because they sell into data centers that are going to service that demand. The model companies, we're still trying to figure out how much money they're making. Anthropic actually put out some good revenue numbers, but all of the model companies are spending a lot. And then the real suspect numbers right now are around the SaaS market and what impact AI will have on that. Not that people are not going to buy SaaS, but how much they're going to be able to charge moving forward. What's the revenue upside?
Maribel Lopez, really good to have you with us with your insights. Principal analyst at Lopez Research with, of course, everything NVIDIA and, of course, how this AI build-out could impact different sectors of the economy. What we're watching is also potential energy demand impact, right? I mean, there are analysts saying that power demand could triple from data centers by 2035. President Trump now convening tech executives to sign pledges committing to pay the electricity bill for data centers. The
White House says the meeting will happen next week with representatives of firms including Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, and Alphabet expected to attend. While the promises wouldn't be binding, administration officials think that formal public pledges could bring accountability, Heidi. Subscribers, of course, Sherry, can also turn to Bloomberg on the terminal for more on NVIDIA's fourth quarter earnings. TL Avigo is your function on the latest updates, plus a commentary and analysis from our expert editors as those questions from analysts coming in. Take a look at what we're watching when it comes to the start of trading here in Asia, and we've got about 12 minutes into the start of the Staggered Open here in Australia, already seeing some gainers, and of course it is all sort of more or less driven by these earnings numbers. Qantas, a record profit as we see that fleet renewal, I should say, starting to really pay off, I should say. Still strength when it comes to loyalties as well. We're seeing some gains really being reversed when it comes to Qantas Airways there. Linus was one that was a miss, the first half net income missing estimates for that period, and we'll be seeing sort of a little bit of downside potentially for that broader mining sector as well, but still quite a lot of optimism there when it comes to broader rare earths given that supply demand story. BlueScope is another one that we're watching there, calling the revised takeover bid thus far from Steel Dynamics as inadequate. They're still open to a deal, a little bit softer, down by just 2%. More interestingly, perhaps, is across the bond and FX space as we continue to see that reaction to the beat on Aussie CPI that we had yesterday. The Aussie dollar also against the backdrop of dollar weakness, seeing the outperformance that we saw nearing that 3-year high in the session. The dollar gauge, though, broadly underperforming with the Asian currencies as a whole at about that 16-month high. Coming up on the Asia trade, we had a major jet deal being secured, but trade tensions continue to linger. Germany's chancellor meets with China's president for the first time. Details of those discussions are next. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, you're going to want to hear this. Credit Karma is dishing the truth on your credit scores and what they mean. Most people don't know Vantage Score is the only model created by the 3 major credit bureaus and used by 9 out of
Take a look at the pretty positive setup when it comes to Asia, that rekindling of AI hopes with the NVIDIA numbers, really a broad theme today, and that will play out when it comes to these tech-heavy names in Japan as well as Korea. We also have a Bank of Korea decision to contend with. Here in Australia, we're seeing gains of about 0.5%, some mixed messaging when it comes to earnings. Good numbers out of Qantas, in fact, a record profit there, but we're seeing that stock tracking lower and some of the mining names also weighing as well. Nikkei futures just ticking into negative territory there. The weakness that we've seen in the yen will continue to be a theme, and S&P futures looking mildly positive. Of course, we're still digesting the sort of reversal, the pairing of gains that we see in NVIDIA as those results continue to be passed. Let's get some more from the Bloomberg MLive strategist, Brendan Fagan. Brendan, so do we see this sort of continued respite? Because it does feel like perhaps market consensus, if you can call it that, is perhaps a reaction to the Citrini post was a bit overdone. Does NVIDIA sort of fix some of that?
Well, you'd certainly hope so. The numbers were obviously great. The guide was great. The question is just a matter of whether it sticks or not. If you look at the NVIDIA chart, we're sort of breaking out at this 197 level of a multi-month range. So it's sort of make or break time and whether these numbers have any follow through above 200. If that's the case, then you can see a broader index rally into the 7,000 level on the S&P 500. But that's sort of what we've been waiting for in this rotation that's taken over the last few weeks. But going back to the Citrini report, I found it a little bit interesting. I had a few people messaging in and messaging into the MLive team more broadly that was it a question of the report causing the sell-off, or were people just looking for an excuse to sell their tech holdings? So it's been an interesting week, but these are good numbers, and so far it seems constructive.
Yeah, especially if you look at some of the software stocks, right? I mean, we had Salesforce as well, and they disappointed when it came to their forecast. So we'll see the upside last, but when it comes to Asia, we have so many suppliers in this part of the world, and of course the Kospi, for example, topping 6,000 with the likes of Samsung, SK Hynix, and all of those chip makers leading the gain. So what can we expect on this side?
Well, I would definitely say, and we say it here in the Americas, is that it seems like equities are just one big trade at the moment, and it's been this weakness in the chips, in the software names. So seeing a bit of a bounce here definitely causes signs for optimism, especially if looking to feed through into the Asia session. So looking for some green on the screen in Asia.
How much further upside do we see when it comes to this dollar weakness and Asian currency strength story? Obviously, some of it's idiosyncratic for the Aussie, for example, on these bets that the RBA will have to move further.
Well, I think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. We're seeing down in Australia a real resurgence in inflation, and you have a tight labor market. So it's a backdrop that spells more hikes from the RBA. So that makes sense. But I think the theme in 2026 is central bank divergence. You're seeing different paths everywhere. You're seeing it between Australia and New Zealand. You look at Aussie Kiwi as an FX pair, the divergence there and the one-way traffic that has been. But you see it with the BOE. They're turning dovish. The Fed is expected to cut. So everybody's on their own path, charting their own course. And as it relates to Asia, it's a little bit interesting with the yen. We have this wider range that we seem to be carving out. It seems like the yen just can't get out of its own way. Takaichi now nominating 2 dovish members to the BOJ. But also on the flip side, we have Scott Bessent, who stepped in. That has now come out that he initiated the rate check a few weeks ago. So we have this soft ceiling, but it also seems we have this soft floor that comes from the Japanese side. So it just seems like we're finding our feet in a bigger range, especially in the yen.
Yeah, I mean, the Aussie, in fact, are the strongest against the yen since 1990. Brendan Fagan, really good to have you with us, Bloomberg M Life strategist there. And of course, we're also following the yuan. We have seen an incredible rally in the Chinese currency. We continue to follow everything geopolitics. Germany and China now expressing optimism that they can overcome their differences on trade and geopolitics to forge stronger ties. This comes as Germany Chancellor Friedrich Merz wraps up his 2-day visit to China today with visits to German and Chinese industries in Beijing and Hangzhou. For the latest, let us bring in our Chief North Asia correspondent, Stephen Engel, in Hong Kong. So, Steve, what's being said?
Well, obviously, Germany and China have a deep yet complicated relationship that, of course, when Friedrich Merz became chancellor last May, in the lead up to that, in his campaign for the chancellorship, he essentially, lobbied for German industries to invest less in China. He has a strong affinity towards the United States, but again, with the upheaval in global trade over the last year, I think he's taking a more pragmatic approach towards China right now. Yes, there are deep differences between Berlin and Beijing over Russia's war in Ukraine, and Merz clearly will be bringing that up, or has brought that up already with his talks yesterday in Beijing with Xi Jinping and also Premier Li Qiang. But also on the trade front, there are trade differences, no doubt, with the exporting of excess industrial capacity into Europe by China. And of course, Merz is there, going to be meeting or going to a Mercedes factory out in the outskirts of Beijing today. Mercedes under threat, no doubt, in China, but also at home with the prospect of Chinese EVs, cheaper cars from China coming into the European Union. So there are a lot of issues to resolve. But again, he is taking a more pragmatic approach, it seems, and both sides are saying that they're going to work, that they're optimistic that they can work to overcome those differences. But that being said, in our Bloomberg reporting, we talked to one official from the German delegation saying this is not the beginning right now of a German-Chinese.
Is wild. Basically, just type in your zip code, put in your address, pick out whatever interior you want to have your roof done in, and it scans your roof with AI, like from some satellite image.
It scans the roof.
Chinese New Spring.
So you would know, Steve, plain orders often an easy kind of deliverable that looks good out of these state visits right to China. Does that mean we have more orders for Airbus?
Well, that's what Friedrich Merz is saying, that essentially he's been told by Xi Jinping, if not Li Qiang, that China is looking to order or place an order for about 120 airplanes right now. We don't know which models. You're seeing the A321 here. They, of course, make the A321 in a final assembly plant in Tianjin, also the A320. But again, about 120 aircraft could be coming as a result of this visit by Friedrich Merz. Keep in mind as well, Donald Trump is going to China at the end of March, early April. I spoke last month to the U.S. ambassador to China, David Perdue, who also confirmed to me that that is going to be one push by Donald Trump to get Boeing aircraft order. There hasn't been a Chinese aircraft order from Boeing with Boeing for many, many years. So again, this is a hotly contested market, no doubt. China needs airplanes, and they're playing obviously Airbus off Beijing, but we'll have to see if that comes to fruition, both for Boeing and also Airbus.
Chief North Asia correspondent Stephen Angle there in Hong Kong. Well, do check out the Bloomberg Video Hub. Subscribers can explore live streaming, news and interviews all on our Bloomberg TV shows, documentaries, reporter analysis and more. Check out bloomberg.com/videos. This is Bloomberg. Take a look at how commodities are trading. We are seeing gold and silver, precious metals, just largely steady. But after gains that we saw in the previous session, we, of course, are reacting to geopolitical tensions around the Middle East, not to mention U.S. tariffs as well. We continue to watch oil on those geopolitical tensions. We are headed towards the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks. The Trump administration also imposing sanctions on entities that support Iranian oil and weapon sales. And also we're watching natural gas futures, which are still higher because people are concerned about more cold weather coming in March that could drain inventories.
Is there a Bitcoin sort of bull case that's being quietly built at the moment? Of course, we know that the major cryptocurrency has been cut almost in half since the October high, but we're seeing sort of some institutional scaffolding built around it still being sustained. So if you take a look at what we're trading at the moment, Bitcoin off by just about 1%, but still it has been approaching that 70,000 level somewhat gradually. We are seeing some signs of risk appetite returning to the broader crypto space. We had sort of 3 sessions of losses, stocks posting modest gains, that broader risk sentiment being improved with Nvidia. It is obviously something that remains to be seen as to whether that optimism spreads through to crypto. Well, more held in the Asia trade. Take a look at some of the moves as we're watching when it comes to this earnings season. It's a little bit of sort of mixed messaging, if you will, because on the one hand, you have Qantas announcing that profit record, I should say, and the renewed fleet really starting to pay off dividends. The sort of energy efficiency story really being quite positive with that record profit coming through as well for the first half. 5.1% was the climb on earnings there to 1.46 Aussie billion. There we'll be speaking to the CEO of Asa Hudson a little bit longer, who does expect strong travel demand to be sustained as well. Having said that, we're seeing that reversal when it comes to Qantas Airways down over 3%. The broader market up by 0.5%. We're seeing some very strong gains when it comes to lithium stocks. Then still that reaction to the suspension in Zimbabwe, they're affecting that supply and demand situation. Linus Rare Earths, that was a miss, but we are seeing that stock up by 3.5% there as well. Let's take a look at these results as we head into the final stretch of earnings season here. Paul Allen is with us, and you would expect Qantas to be doing better, Linus perhaps to be reacting in the opposite direction.
Yeah, indeed. We'll get to Linus in a moment, but Qantas, a pretty good set of numbers there, a record as you outlined, and returning cash to shareholders as well. Fuel costs were an issue. They did rise more than expected to 2.61 billion Aussie dollars, and the second half they're expecting to see that trend continue. But more aircraft on the way, 6 coming in the second half, and then another 30 over 18 months. These will be more fuel efficient. They'll replace the aging domestic fleet as well. On the international side, we had an interesting announcement as well. There's going to be a new route, Sydney-Las Vegas direct. That's going to start at the end of the year. It'll be seasonal though, and it's going to coincide with a couple of things like, there's a big rugby league event there in the early new year in Las Vegas, the CES show as well. But a lot of focus and questions still on Project Sunrise, this long-awaited plan to fly direct from Sydney to New York and London. The latest is that is due to start 2027 with those first planes arriving later this year.
Camilla, what's been your assessment? In some ways, we've seen kind of Australia as being the haven because it's largely shielded by a lot of the AI scare trade, the sell-out there. But is that playing out in this market?
Scribe makes step-by-step guides for any process with AI. You know what's terrifying at work? When you start a new job and there's no training. None of the processes are documented and you're completely on your own. Let me show you one of the best kept work secrets. It's called Scribe. Go to scribehow.com. Click capture, do the task once, and Scribe makes a step-by-step guide you can share automatically. You ever walk someone through a giant process and know they'll forget half of it? Well, Scribe puts everything they need to know. Instructions, pictures, videos, all in one page. So the next time they ask, you can send the link. I know what you're thinking. They still click the wrong thing half the time. Well, check this out. Scribe will literally guide them through it, click by click. Warning, they're going to think you're a genius and ask how you did it. Just say Scribe. Scribe instantly turns any workflow into a step-by-step guide, so you never have to explain it again. Go to scribehow.com and try it for free. You don't even need a credit card.
I was going to go. I was pushing for 100, but
My grandmother, she lived to be 101, almost 102. So I think our generation now, we can make it past 120 years.
my dad was at 95. Perfect health.
So you're gonna be 110 around there, 110 and above.
My son's retired Army, 24 and a half years, Army.
Army is tough.
And then my uncle.
I'm more of a computer guy. I make things happen in the sky, you know? It's different on the
I think so. I mean, it's sort of mixed, as you mentioned earlier. We're seeing a lot of inflows coming into the banks, which had a strong result earlier in the month, in February. That sub-gauge was at historical levels. But in other ways, it's also sort of being hit hard by the tech sell-off. Obviously, that's been a big narrative that's been big in markets at the moment, with fears about AI disruption. However, what we're seeing with the actual companies that have been reporting in February so far in terms of the tech earnings, they're actually quite positive. We had Wise Tech's earnings yesterday, we had SiteMinder, Iris. All of these companies delivered earnings beats, which were rewarded fairly generously with a share price rebound in the market. So yeah, it's quite mixed across the board. We're seeing some haven inflows in some areas of the market that are performing better, while others are still struggling.
Well, man, have a good one.
You as well. God bless. I see you tomorrow,
When it comes to sort of the broader earnings season, have you been impressed? I actually have been. We mentioned at the beginning of February that this is the first year in a while that earnings growth is meant to return to the market, and we have started to see that earnings growth come back. A lot of that has been driven by strength in the mining sector, particularly in BHP, in Rio Tinto. Fortescue had earnings early this week, which were above expectations. So it's been quite interesting and quite positive for people watching Australia's markets to see that earnings growth return.
What's going on with miners? Because obviously that rare earth space is such an opportunistic one, given all of the geopolitical overlay.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You think on the surface this should be a license to print money, right? I mean, Lyna's one of two major producers outside of China, the only one that actually makes money, and it's reflected in the market cap too. You know, it's now bigger than Qantas, even though it makes way less. But you know, it's China's dominance of this space which really keeps a lid on prices. That said, Lyna says that things are improving on the price front. We saw sales rise. We saw the price of its sales rising as well. So a big improvement on the $5 million or so that we saw for this period last year. $80 million for net income, still a miss, but you know, better than the previous half, as I mentioned. Going forward, the 2025 CapEx program now complete. The CEO says they've now got the assets and the capabilities to immediately benefit from this new environment in rare earths.
For both Paul Allen here and Australia New Zealand equities reporter Carmeli Argana there as we headed to that final stretch of earnings here in Oz. And we'll get some more on Qantas and the outlook for the flag carrier. We'll be speaking with the group CEO, Vanessa Hudson, a little bit later on. That's coming up on Insight with Haslinda Amin at 3:30 p.m. if you're watching in Sydney. This is Bloomberg. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has reaffirmed her pro-stimulus stance with the nomination of 2 reflationist academics to join the BOJ board. The proposed appointments weakened the yen, boosted stocks, and pushed up long-term bond yields. Let's bring in our Japan economy and government editor Paul Jackson. Paul, so who are these 2 nominees?
We've got Toichiro Asada, a 71-year-old professor emeritus at Chuo University, and Ayano Sato, a 57-year-old law professor at Aoyama Gakuin. Now, both are known as reflationists. So I think the interesting point here is that Prime Minister Takaichi has had a moment to show markets that she's taking a balanced view on policy. By having 2 appointees at one time. One may be a very dovish figure, a reflationist, and someone a bit more central. But she hasn't gone down that path. She's chosen 2 reflationists. So I think in terms of the immediate impact on the BOJ board, I think it's going to be limited. But what this does show us is that after this emphatic landslide election victory, that Takaichi's feeling more like emboldened to stick to her original kind of strategy of boosting Japan's economy and having growth as the priority of her economic strategy.
But we saw the market reaction with the weakness of the Japanese yen, and given that we're also getting indications that rate check that happened from the New York Fed perhaps was more an idea of Scott Bessent, will this become a problematic issue with the Trump administration?
Well, I think we can't rule out that there could be rising friction on this, and I think that you just touched on the key point there, which is the yen. Now, we know from the Fed that the order came from the Treasury to try these rate checks. So it's coming from Scott Bessent. As we know, Scott Bessent is fascinated by Japan. We also know he's got this expertise in currencies dating back from his time with George Soros. So he's keenly interested in what's happening with the yen. Now, he's done Japan a favor. I mean, after the Bank of Japan's meeting in January, you've got the yen sliding, and the US essentially gets Japan out of jail without currency intervention. He's done a favor. So how is he going to be feeling if the yen then starts sliding back towards 160? I suspect, Sherry, he's not going to be too happy.
No, and even President Trump, remember before, like right now, he seems to be happy with the Japan-US trade deal, but even a couple of years back, he was talking about the weakness of the Japanese yen. What can we expect then from the Bank of Japan? Is there anything that they can do, especially with those rate hikes and going perhaps against what the administration actually wants?
Well, I mean, it's tricky position. It's looking ever more tricky for the policymakers at the Bank of Japan with the Takaichi administration. Let's see how that pans out. The Prime Minister has been very careful in her public remarks on the Bank of Japan since she took the helm of the party and became Prime Minister. I think there's still, I think it's not likely we're going to see anything happening in March. These appointees that we've had from Takaichi indicate that she's in no rush for some near-term rate hike. So I think the earliest we can expect is April. But I think the key point is what happens between now and March the 19th with the yen.
Right now, trading at that 156 level against the greenback. Paul Jackson, good to have you with us with that context of what's happening around the Bank of Japan, Bloomberg Japan economy and government editor. We have more ahead. This is Bloomberg.
As a small business owner, you need a tax service that lets you focus on your business while
We have more ahead. This is Bloomberg. I'm here in Jamsil Central Seoul, home to Lotte Group's flagship assets. Its hotel, amusement park, shopping mall, cinema, they're all mainstay businesses for one of Korea's oldest and largest conglomerates. The group is now carrying out a major overhaul, betting on growth drivers and shedding underperforming assets. Lotte's chemical and retail businesses have been pressured by the global petrochemical downturn and sluggish domestic demand.
Lotte Chemical posted another year in the red in 2025 with a $1.7 billion net loss. The conglomerate is now offloading non-core and overseas assets to shore up its balance sheet and pivot to growth. At its core, Lotte Biologics, with the group betting on its contract development and manufacturing business as a key future engine.
We're focusing on the CDMO because we have expertise in execution, and we have a history of a chemical division as well as customer focused as well in hotel and retail business that we're well known for the last 50 years. So again, we could combine those technical and science with the customer focused, and CDMO is the right area, and then the bio industry is also growing as well. So we feel it's the right area for focus for Lotte Group.
But because of that, there are so many other players as well, including domestically, Samsung Biologics, Celltrion, and of course globally as well, as a new entrant. And you're very young, only 4 years, 2022 you launched.
Yes.
How do you compete?
That's a good question. We are late boomer, but I think one of the things that we could differentiate is we do have a BMS legacy facility that we purchased 3 years ago in Syracuse, New York, who has a rich history and heritage of a biological product manufacturing. So that's the differentiating factor. And then again, we cross-train from Syracuse as well as a Songdo facility that's coming online. So there's a tremendous opportunity for us to work together and cross-training and get ready for production in Songdo facility later on in 2027.
Are there any benefits to the supply chain realignment for Lotte Biologics, especially if you consider the likes of the new Biosecure Act that may hinder some of those Chinese competitors from the U.S. market?
Absolutely. We have seen a little bit of surge in terms of our candidate pool who may have used Chinese-based CDMO wanting to come to U.S. for U.S. manufacturing, mainly for clinical study in the U.S. It would be easier from the registration perspective to have a clinical supplies manufactured in the U.S. for U.S. patients. So from that perspective, we're getting some attraction. And also from the European pharmaceutical companies, again, because of this pressure, they want to have opportunity to manufacture in the U.S. as well for the U.S. patients. So definitely we're getting some positive attractions for our Syracuse site.
When you look at the customer demographics and across regions, are U.S. clients the most important at this point? Is that the most active part?
I think so. I mean, again, generally speaking, U.S. is the biggest market. So there's a lot of big pharma companies there. But certainly there is also, strong presence of Korean pharmaceutical companies as well.
Could eventually China market also be available?
I think so, but because of the current environment, I think that would be a little bit more challenging. But we're not going to ignore it because I think China has those areas where biosimilar development they're very quick on. So depending on availability in China CDMO versus what we could deliver from the Asia market as well as the rest of the world.
Lotte Biologics CEO James Park speaking to us exclusively in Seoul. In fact, Park talked also about a potential IPO that could come in the next few years, and perhaps what a good time right now when the Kospi continues to rally. We have seen the public markets in South Korea gaining incredible ground with the Kospi past that 6,000 level. Samsung, SK Hynix really leading that charge. Korea's market cap now bigger than France's after topping Germany's just last month, and of course, a lot to do really with the strength in the tech sector. I mentioned Samsung. They just unveiled their new smartphone lineup with the Galaxy S26 as well. We do have also a Bank of Korea rate decision as well. The expectation is for a hold at 2.5%. Our Korea economist, Hyo-sung Kwon, joins us now from Seoul. Hyo-sung, good to have you with us. So we are expecting a hold. So what will you be watching in today's decision?
Yes, so the BOK's rate hold today is a foregone conclusion, but what is less clear is the signal on what comes next. So in my view, BOK will complete its shift to neutrality at this meeting. So in January, BOK cut the language of whether or